Welcome back to a scary version of Story Corner. Now that we're getting awfully close to Halloween, I think it's time to share with you some truly gruesome stories. So forget ghosts, vampires or supernatural killers. This is a proper Scottish horror story from the 16th century. Now, nobody knows if it's entirely true or not, but for the sake of Halloween we're going to assume that Sawney Bean and his family were very real and very nasty people. The story goes that in his younger days, Sawney was a bit of a layabout. He didn't want to follow in his father's footsteps, become a hard-working hedger and ditcher, so he ran away from home. Without any legal way of earning money, Sawney lived a life of petty crime. It wasn't all bad though. He met the love of his life. She just happened to be a woman as depraved and as cruel as he was. They're a young couple. They moved in together, but not into a lovely marital cottage. To save on paying any rent, they moved into a hidden cave in Ayrshire. They had plenty of children. They had 8 sons and 6 daughters in all. But with extra mouths to feed, petty theft just wasn't going to cut it anymore. Sawney and his wife, they would lay in wait on the roads around their little hidden cave until just the right prey passed by. A lone rider was perfect. Somebody they could be sure wasn't going to escape them. They also had to make sure nobody was going to miss them, because they didn't just rob these victims, they murdered them as well. They took the bodies back to their ever-increasing brood, because they weren't going to let anything go to waste. Sawney Bean and his family, well, they were cannibals. It said that they would drink human blood like wine. They chopped off limbs and they hung bodies from the cave ceiling like they were on butcher's hooks. Anything they didn't gorge themselves on right away, they pickled in barrels for later. Before long, locals started to notice people were going missing. They searched the shoreline, but Sawney Bean's cave, it was well hidden, only accessible for small periods during low tide. Every so often a hand or a foot would wash ashore with little gnaw marks on it. Everybody just assumed, well, the disappearances must be down to wild animals. But Sawney's children grew into adults. They could join the family business, and now hunting like a pack, they could take on more than just solitary travellers. And they needed to as well, because those 8 sons and 6 daughters had multiplied again into 18 grandsons and 14 granddaughters. Now, cave-dwelling cannibals weren't the most attractive people on the dating scene, but that didn't matter. They just bred with each other. Over 1,000 people had gone missing over the years, but the cannibals had avoided detection. And everything went wrong for Sawney Bean and his clan when they attacked a man and his wife returning from the county fair. Now, the man was something of a champion fighter. With his sword drawn, he was doing his best to hold off his attackers. The poor wife, on the other hand, well, she was quickly dragged to the floor, and her clothes were ripped to shreds by manic hands before she was sliced open, and the cannibals started to devour her there and then. Stunned, but no doubt fighting harder than ever now, the man was relieved when a large group appeared on the road, also returning from the fair. Sawney must have realised they were outnumbered. The family fled off into the woods, but for the first time they left behind a witness and a corpse. The traumatised husband reported what had happened to the magistrate. His story went right to the top. King James himself arrived in Ayrshire with a large force of armed men, complete with trained hunting hounds. And they scoured the coasts up and down, and while their eyes found nothing, the dogs couldn't miss the stench of human blood. The king and his soldiers, they followed the hounds to the cave, and at low tides they entered to the most horrific sight imaginable. Piles of clothing, jewellery, other possessions littered the floor, while the walls were covered in rows upon rows of human body parts. At the back of the cave, surrounded by hundreds of nibbled human bones was Sawney Bean and his clan of cannibals. There was no escape. The soldiers dragged the family to Edinburgh to meet justice, while the king ordered what was left of the mangled body parts be given a proper burial. No trial was deemed necessary. The men, they had their hands and their feet cut off, left to bleed to death. The women, they were burned at the stake. Well, there might not be any official records of any cannibal hunts like this in Scotland. The story of Sawney Bean is still widely told. Maybe this episode was so shocking that all evidence of it was officially destroyed. Now, after all, James VI was looking forward to becoming King of England in the very near future. Something like this might have put them off him. Even if you don't believe that it ever happened, next time you see a cave while you're walking along the coast, are you sure you're ready to see what's inside? Sláinte.